We cover technology and REITs in detail, so do subscribe to our notifications and
Good afternoon and welcome to BizTech's ASEAN Midday Market Watch. Our guest today is Gabriel Yap, Executive Chairman of GCP Global. Now, Gabriel, good afternoon on a Friday afternoon.
Good afternoon, Brian. It's end of April.
Yes. Now, before we get some of your insights, let's take a look at how markets are performing after record performances overnight in the US. Now, we've got the Bursa Malaysia, which is at 1,602.8. It's down 0.35%. SGX is at 5,993.35. It's down 0.33%. The Nikkei is down 0.73% at 28,842.58. Shanghai Composite is at 3,457.09. It's down 0.51%. Hang Seng is at 28,856.26. It's down 1.53%. ASX 200 is at 7,024.90. It's down 0.81%. Rounding off the numbers, we've got the Kospi, which is down 0.79% at 3,408.41. Gabriel, what's your view on the sea of red across the region despite the performance overnight on Wall Street?
Well, Brian, as we say, it's the end of April. I think after a very strong month, it's not surprising that some funds are actually just taking profits off the table. In fact, if you go across all spectrum, be it tech, electric vehicle, gaming, technology, China internet, most of the sectors actually have performed this particular month very well, and if you look at even the trend from the first 4 months of this year, considering the highs of February and then the lows in March, the recovery alone from mid-March till the end of April as of today, in certain sectors is as strong as 30 to 40%. So it's not surprising that you're seeing some profit taking on the horizon.
Now, the profit taking is happening in the background of good PMI numbers out of China, slightly down from 51.9 the previous month, but this morning it came in at 51.1. Japan's manufacturing and PMI numbers were also up and outperformed. So overall, the story globally seems to be the global recovery story is very much well on track.
Yes, Brian, because if you actually look at the 3-month averages for both the PMI in Japan and China, as well as the 6-month averages, they're actually showing a clear, consistent uptrend, albeit, the magnitude may not be as strong on a per month basis, but it's more an aberration. But overall, I think the key trend for investors is that they are pointing upwards. They are pointing towards the recovery that you and I have been talking about since last year.
Now, also the other pointers to the global economic recovery story is tech stock earnings. Now, we've got Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, and Alphabet reporting stellar numbers over the last few days. Now, the broader tech sector also have reported great numbers. Now, what's your take on this? Do you see the rotation back into tech away from cyclicals as a result of this strong performance?
Well, Brian, as you pointed out, the big tech, especially in the US, have had a smashing results. This week alone, essentially, and this is only the second time that the big five, that is actually your Faangs, Facebook, Alphabet, Apple, Microsoft, and Google will actually reporting in the same particular week. And you can see that beginning of the week, you have Facebook smashing numbers, with an tremendous revenue growth of almost 48%. So revenue was at 26 billion. Can you imagine, Brian? That's just 26 billion in one quarter. Then you actually have Google coming in, and smashing you again at 56 billion. That's one quarter numbers, and then you have Microsoft that came in, at 41.7 billion again for this quarter. Last night or the day before, you actually have Apple hitting 90 billion for the first time in one quarter, Brian. And last night you actually have Amazon hitting 108 billion again, in just one quarter. So all five tech stocks, Prime, I think a lot of literature has been written that they are actually the FANG stocks. Earnings have slowed, they are no longer growth, even though they are tech. Now, all this is like being thrown out the window, because if you just look at the last 3 years trajectory in terms of the share price. Now, all these big five have actually had their share prices going up 2.5 times to 300%. That's a 250% to 300% gain. Now all this are tracking on very strong operating tracking numbers. So, for example, like Google and Facebook is riding on very strong advert numbers, and you're seeing it through its various multi-platforms itself. Whereas, for example, the Apple ecosystem is generating the kind of revenue that Warren Buffett is laughing all the way to the bank. And then for listeners who on your program have listened to us, they are obviously laughing to the bank as well.
Absolutely. You've been spot on a number of occasions. One of the things I like about all these earnings is also the fact that these tech companies, their earnings are global. It is diversified. It is not US centric. What that then is confirming is that global recovery story. So we see the statistical and data from the governments saying that yes, there is a lot of growth, like PMI numbers, jobless numbers, and so forth. But the fact that these guys are earning so much money is really pointing to the global consumer spending money and global corporations spending money.
Yes, that's right. I mean, for example, Brian, if you take a good look at one of my multi-decade favorite now, that's actually Microsoft. The trading code is Msft. In this recent set of results, they actually announced not only contracts from enterprises, new companies, they also announced new contracts from the government, particularly the defense kind of contracts, which they cannot go into detail. But more importantly also is that Microsoft is also firing on the Azure background, which is basically the 5G connectivity, which is an area that I have actually been telling all my students of GCP Global, mentioning in our classes, reiterating that 5G is one area that you cannot miss out in terms of your investment choices. In fact, of having 5G stocks in your investment portfolio to go for the next, for the rest of this decade is imperative for outperformance.
Now, Gabriel, I want to bring us closer to home, and we want to talk about DBS earnings, which just announced its earnings this morning. 72% jump in first quarter earnings. Net profit for first 3 months end March rose to 2.01 billion from 1.17 billion a year ago, completely blowing out analyst forecast from Bloomberg from 6 different analysts of an average of 1.44 billion. What is your take on that, and what is your view on their earnings as well as the banks, OCBC and UOB, who are basically announcing their earnings next week, and the broader Singapore stock exchange as a whole?
Well, I would actually say that DBS actually represents a few trends. One is the fact that the recovery from last year's low base comparison is there. The very volatile conditions that we saw, since the pandemic recovery have actually allowed trading opportunities, and actually some of the traders within the DBS side, the prop desks have actually done pretty well in terms of the trading profit that they have gained. Thirdly, also DBS is also seeing a messy of companies coming for engaging into their services, and that's why you see the commission income as well as the payable fees have actually increased along the tandem. I think going forward, I think you are actually going to see a lot of global banks that not the likes of Nomura, who have actually been enamored with Archegos or Credit Suisse, but essentially I think the banks essentially will be supporting many of the family offices, will be actually providing credit lines for a lot of enterprises, will be supporting basically a lot of companies going for IPOs, so be it through SPACs or via not, you're seeing that these banks are playing a supporting role. Now, you're actually seeing the yields coming back in a big way, particularly the Chinese banks like Bank of China, ICBC, so on and so forth.
Now, Gabriel, it's always a pleasure having you on the show.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Gabriel. We've been speaking to Gabriel Yap, Executive Chairman of GCP Global.
We cover innovators, disruptors, technology, and REITs in detail, so do subscribe to our channel so that you'll be notified with our next upcoming video. Have a great day, everyone.